Warning: the following video contains heavy spoilers from the franchise Red Dead. If you have not beaten Red Dead Redemption 1 or 2, then I suggest you go back. Understand the storyline, then come back to fully watch this program. If you have seen it, then enjoy. Oh shoot! Oh my fault. Hold on.
Years, something like that. Since I was a boy.
20 years?
Yeah. Taught me to read.
What if Red Dead Redemption 3 happened? When I first saw this picture, it made me think there's a far more to the story of Red Dead Redemption, and then all of a sudden, it clicked. They should make a Red Dead Redemption 2 prequel. Now, of course, this is not likely to happen in the next 10 to 15 years, but this is what it should be if it were to happen. So if you know in Grand Theft Auto 5, you got three main protagonists, and you switch through them throughout the story. Well, these will be three protagonists. You'll play as young Dutch, Hosea, and Arthur. First, the story will focus on Dutch and how he started on the Vanderland gang, and with his early feud between him and Como Driscoll. Next, the story will focus on Hosea trying to pursue his dreams of being a stand-up comic as a stage actor, but forcibly trying to survive by doing bad things. The story will then focus on young Arthur facing the tragedy of his parents' death and being a completely bad kid in the streets until all three of them eventually meet together. As the story progresses, you will see the growth of the Vanderland gang and how it all started. More and more characters will slowly join the gang, making it grow while you see everyone in their early years. The gang will also slowly progress the story as they all age to become their most powerful extent. You'll see everyone's backstory of how they became involved with their relationships. There's just about so much backstory and history Red Dead that should be executed in this future title for all us to experience, because the story of Red Dead Redemption goes further back than you think. The game will be set in 1870s, and you will play as young Dutch Vanderland, where he was raised in Frederica. Fortunately, his father died in the Battle of Gettysburg, and his mother was buried in Blackwater. This caused Dutch from being a bad kid to a criminal. After you play as Dutch, you get a sense of his story. Then you will play as Hosea Matthews, who is raised in the mountains. He was briefly a stage actor who had dreams of being a comedian. At one point, Hosea was caught stealing a chicken by the county sheriff, and then decided to hang Hosea as punishment. But a riot erupted a hanging when the group people believed his punishment was unfair. So an ungrown man came to Hosea's assistance by shooting the rope, freeing Hosea. As Hosea got away with it, the group then hung the sheriff. At some point, the two protagonists will meet. Dutch and Hosea both meet at a campfire, for Hosea actually tried to rob Dutch, only to realize that Dutch had already stolen from him. Both with potential and skill in each other and laughed it off. They decided to team up after finding the Vanderland gang. The two both become people in Gator, Ohio, investing into made-up company. They both were eventually discovered by the police and arrested, so Dutch and Jose rot in jail. You would then play as young Arthur Morgan. You understand his backstory of his mother dying, and how you watch his father die. This caused Arthur to become a wild kid in the streets. After you get an understanding of Arthur's origin, you will then play as Dutch and Hosea, escaping jail. As they escaped, They both came across teenage Arthur Morgan, and this is where they all meet. They saw that this boy was a wild delinquent in the streets and had nowhere else to go. So they both decided to take Arthur under their wing by getting him to join the gang, making Arthur Morgan to be the first member of the Vanderland gang. Arthur viewed Dutch and Hosea as father figures to him. They taught him everything he knew. They taught him how to read, write, hunt, fight, shoot, and ride. They raised Arthur, and that is the reason why Arthur looks up to Dutch and Hosea, because not only did they save him, because they were also helped him understand the world around him. It's also one of the reasons why Arthur heavily looks up to Dutch in the second game, where he was only a father. And this is the point where the game will be its third Vanderland game, with the protagonist you play as being Dutch, Hosea, and young Arthur. The main three later in the story, Dutch falls in love with a woman named Susan Grinshaw, who's a member of the game. She's an OG and is the mother of the gang. Hosea also falls in love with a woman named Bessie, who he later married. He left the game for some time to be with her. They both drifted away from crime for a while, until Bessie passed away for something that is unknown in the evidence of the history. This broke Hosea hard, and it caused him to be drunk for a year after her death. This explains so much of why Hosea is this way. He's in the second game. He tries to reason with Dutch, resolve things in peace, but he has no choice but to be violent.
Why are we doing this? Weather's breaking. We could leave. I thought we was lying low.
Yeah, come on. What do you want from me, Hosea?
I just don't want any more folks to die, Dutch.
We're living, Hosea, but I kept together. Kept us alive. Kept the nooses off our neck.
I guess I'm just worried. I ain't got that long, Dutch. I want folks safe before I go.
Me too.
And now we are stuck east of the Grizzlies and out of money. And a long way from our dream of virgin land in the west.
I know, my brother, but we are safe.
It's their survival. Similarly, Arthur has learned about the world, found a pet dog, and had difficulty controlling him, but admired the dog's spirit until the dog passed away. He later got a female horse, Policia, his signature horse. He met a girl named Mary, and they become very close to each other. The two were in a relationship. She had a little brother named Jamie, and Arthur became a father figure to him. Jimmy looked up to Arthur, and Arthur liked him in comparison to the rest of Mary's family. Speaking of Mary's family, their father, Mr. Gills, disproved of Arthur being in Mary's life because he's an outlaw. This caused the two to separate and move on from their love to each other. Mr. Gillis is also drunk. What the hell? Give me a second, hold on. Alright, we're back. So, my bad, guys. Mr. Gillis is also drunk and verbally abused Jamie and is addicted to whoring and gambling. This led Jamie to run away and to join a cult. Not only that, but Mr. Gillis pawned off the family's valuables to get out of debt. To make matters worse, Mary moved on and married another man, but he later died from pneumonia, making her a widow. This obviously hurt Arthur the way Mr. Gillis did their love for each other. His relationship to his only son Jamie. This shows a lot why Arthur Morgan is the way he's in the second game as well. It is very important to the backstory. Then we move on to Dutch's situation. He moved up from his Grimshaw for another woman named Annabelle. And then he met a famous outlaw of the West, Como Driscoll, leader of his own gang, the O'Driscolls. The two maintain a loose and uneasy partnership, as Dutch disliked how Combe treated his men as disposable. Combe likewise mocked Dutch for his velocity in making a better world. Dutch broke the truth and killed Combs' brother. In revenge, Combe murdered Annabelle, which left Dutch greatly angered and heartbroken over her death. This event caused Dutch and Combe to become arch enemies and sparked years-long blood feud between the two rival gangs. An endless rivalry, Combe would later expand his operation, turning his game into the largest, most powerful game in the West. Carmel Driscoll will be the villain in Red Dead Redemption 3. It shows how personal the rivalry of the two gangs are. He also breaks touch by the reason of the history of the never-ending feud. That is why Calm would be the main antagonist of the game. Later in the story, Dutch comes across the group known as homesteaders trying to lynch a 12-year-old boy named John Marston, who was caught stealing from them. Dutch saved that boy's life by killing these men. Dutch saw that little John was an orphan and he decided to take care of him. He raised John, teaching him everything he knew, just like Arthur. Both Arthur and John were like sons to him, and they were both grew up to be brothers. John would be like how Jackie was in the second game, was still a child looking up to Arthur as his big brother. John was still Arthur's backstory, how his mom died giving birth and how his dad died in a bar fight. That caused John to run away from his orphanage to survive on the streets. He also shot a man at 11 for a known reason, not explained yet. This will cause Arthur to relate to John and how both their backstories are very similar. Some time later, Dutch led the gang's first major bank robbery alongside Hosea and young Arthur. They successfully robbed the bank of $5,000 in gold. After the robbery, they lingered around in town, giving all the money away to the poor and orphanages. During his early years, the gang made a genuine attempt to help the poor, positioning themselves as Robin Hood-like figures in the process. They all became wanted men. Dutch earned a prize on his head. The Dutch and Vanderlyn gang were now famous and was seen as a Robin Hood-like figure, causing Dutch to realize that him and his gang could be more than just a violent street gang. This also made him become a very intelligent speaker and better leader. But Hosea became delusional with the game over time when it stopped helping others instead of focus on its own survival, and in addition become increasingly violent. This is also where the Vanillin game becomes noticed by the media, wanted by the Pinkertons. This causes the second antagonist, Leviticus Cornwall, to spark a feud between his Pinkerton detective agency and the Vanderlyn gang. He was on a mission to end the Vanderlyn gang. Over time, as the story of Red Dead Redemption 3 progresses, you will see more and more characters joining the gang. Expanding it, you will get an understanding of all their backstories and how they all joined the game. Everyone will age over time, progressing the story. One of the characters is named Abigail. She was introduced to the gang and ended up being involved in it. Apparently, she slept with a lot of the men, including Dutch, Javier, and possibly Arthur. We, we don't know, but she mainly fell in love with John and eventually becoming pregnant at 18 with Jack. Speaking of Jack, it's time for a reality check. Red Dead Redemption 3 should not be a sequel to Red Dead Redemption 1. It should not be about Jack. I mean, the West is already dead after the game, so it wouldn't make any sense to continue the storyline because that is where the tale ends. And since this is why you see title card Red Dead Redemption, that's the ending. Plus, it's even sadder because although the gang, Arthur, John, Abigail were trying to prevent Jack from becoming a killer, it still happened. This is why the whole entire storyline with redemption is sad because Jack still became a killer. He got his revenge, but that's not what Arthur, John, or Abigail wanted in the first place. The key to the whole story is Jack and how they were raising him to become a good man when in reality he still became the killer we're trying to prevent in the first place. That's why Jack is also important to the story, and that is why the ending of the tale is sad. So so why would they continue? Anyways, let's get back to the story. Another character that joined the gang would be Micah Bell. Micah met Dutch in a bar. Dutch was trying to sell some gold the gang stole from others, but the deal went sour. Thankfully, Micah saved Dutch's life, so that's how he got in the gang. He is a very skilled warrior, disliked by the gang. Arthur and Hosea saw him as argumentative, reckless, and hot-headed with Dutch alone, taking a liking to Micah. They both became very close partners, with Micah telling Dutch his backstory, causing Dutch to heavily relate to him. It would show how Micah easily manipulated Dutch and impacted the gang entirely. This is why Dutch trusts Micah's word in the second game, and why Dutch is clueless of who he thinks he's betraying, and when in reality it's Micah. This is the reason mm, why Micah is a villain in Red Dead Redemption 2. Moving on with the story, I think they should add a storyline where Hosea is dealing with the Pinkertons. I think his arch enemy would be Liquidus Cornwall. And I say this because I think Hosea's death in Red Dead Redemption 2 was very personal somehow. Mm, mm, Maybe him and Ancient Milton have a history battling with each other. They should really spin up on the game. This Despite Hosea not liking to be violent, he still has to be. They should also add the storyline of Arthur's sacrifice, of finally becoming a man. We know that Arthur messed around with a waitress named Azela and got her pregnant with Arthur's son, Isaac. Azela hated how Arthur survived, but accepted the support from him. He visited and stayed with him from time to time, and he was a great father to Isaac. But sadly, one day, Arthur came home. He saw two crosses outside the house. He cried because he knew they were both dead. He later found out that they had been shot and killed by robbers for $10. Their trauma damaged Arthur hard. He was hurt, and it forced him to become a good man. That's why in the second game, Arthur Morgan is a way he is a good man. Even if he was the killer, he still had a good heart. Since what the death of Arthur Morgan is the saddest moment in video game history. He sacrificed his life for John and his family. The reason why Arthur didn't cough on Micah is because that's not who he is. He didn't want anyone else to go through of what he did. He sacrificed his life for others. That is why Arthur Morgan is the best video game protagonist of all time. Sometime later, Arthur becomes an uncle figure to Jack because John doesn't believe that Jack is his son. To be honest, he might not be. We know that Abigail apparently slept with Dutch and Javier. We all had, where Dutch said we all had her, and grown up Jack looks a lot like Javier and Dutch, but we may never know the truth. So John leaves the game for a year, and he comes back, but Arthur feels betrayed because John, what he did, and how sadly. Rockstar's obviously going to have add a lot of storyline of what we already know. There is more adventure to the story's past, so that should definitely should be acknowledged. They should mainly focus on Dutch and possibly add a new storyline of something we don't know about in his past. That goes for Hosea too. It's like we know everything about Arthur Morgan, but what about Dutch or Hosea? There would be some new characters that we never seen before as well. Alright, now we got the storyline of Red Dead Redemption 3 out of the way. I might get to Blackwater in a minute. Let's talk about the gameplay elements of the protagonist. When you play as Dutch, you will be a leader. You will lead the whole gang, go on new adventures, similar to how Johnny Clements in Grand Theft Auto 4, The Lost and Damned, led the pack bikers in the gang. You will lead the pack Rendling gang and get in battles against the O'Driscolls. When you play as Hosea, you will mainly focus on stealth, taking over businesses with new weapons and gadgets, and being quiet and sneaky like Solid Snake in Metal Gear Solid. I think they should have like, hold on. Let me go back. I have a stroke for some reason. I think they should have Jose mainly be focused towards the Pinkertons, where he will deal with Cornwall and will be protecting us towards Hosea. When you play as Arthur, you'll be similar to Jimmy Hopkins and Bully. You're young, so you'll be learning more things as a kid with crafting weapons like slingshots and stuff. Over time, when Arthur gets old enough throughout the story, he will then earn the gun and finally get to become more cowboy-like as the game progresses. But what if Arthur decided, no, the storyline is too repetitive and not all that new. We needed to change something that is where I present to you. Mac Calendar. Now the calendar boys are a very serious topic, and I had to include them in this video. Um, this guy had to include them in this video because the brothers joined the gang. Were very violent guys. Apparently, Mac single-handedly beat up 15 cells in a brawl. Now, when you think about Matt Calendar being a protagonist of Red Dead Redemption 3, it's scary. But I don't think they should make it to where you're this guy with a separate story from the Rendling game. Then you join it in the last minute. I still think they should expand how the Rendling game grew to win the second game. But when you think the Matt Calendar, it kind of makes sense. When you see Matt Counter both die in a Blackwater massacre, which we're going to be talking about in a minute, they both were involved in robbery, and Davey got injured, got rescued by the gang, but later died in the beginning of Red Dead Redemption 2. But Mac escaped on his own. He was gang chased by the Pinkertons and was eventually caught and killed by Agent Milton. Milton claimed that Mac was all shot up by the time they caught him. So sarcastically state that his death was slow, merciful.
You see, I haven't done anything wrong, aside from not playing the games to your rules.
Spare me the philosophy lesson. I've already heard it from Mac Callan.
Matt Callan.
He was pretty shot up by the time I got to him. So really, it was more of a mercy killing. Slow, but merciful.
You enjoy being a rich man's toy, dear?
If that doesn't sound like some Scarface level, then I don't know what does. It gives me protagonist vibes because his death is somewhat sounds like a mix between John's death and Arthur's. So the proof is there. Now let's say Rockstar said no. They just let's just make it Red Dead. Oh my god. I have a stroke for no reason, bro. Now let's say Rockstar said, nah, no. It's just make and they read that that's completely unrelated throughout the game storyline. Well, they made a completely new storyline. I would believe that to be inaccurate. We obviously know the story of Red Dead Redemption isn't done yet, and I don't think they should abandon the storyline for a totally new one. I mean, yeah, the story is completed at the end of this Red Dead Redemption 1, but what about before all that? What about before John or Jack or Arthur Morgan? What about the story that I just explained? There is more to the story. So no, they shouldn't make a new game that's unrelated to Red Dead Redemption. Now it's time to finally talk about the one we all been waiting for.
I ain't had time to ask you. What really went down back there on that boat?
The Blackwater Massacre. The Blackwater Massacre was a famous and violent gunfight involving a Vanderlyn gang. The Blackwater Police Department pressured the detective agency during a robbery on the nearby ferry. The ferry was carrying $150,000 of bank money, so Dutch and Vanderlyn gang tried to rob it. Dutch sent Hosea and Arthur for their own lead. As the gang successfully got the money, it was too late. The cops and Pinkerton soon swarmed the area. It caused all of them to a gun battle, causing everyone to get shot. The highly populated Blackwater was in shock, and almost everyone died. At some point during the massacre, Dutch shot an innocent young woman called Hattie McCur in the head, killing her. Apparently, Micah Bell encouraged and manipulated Dutch to kill her. After the massacre, the gunfight proved to be devastating for the Vanderlyn gang. The woman named Jenny Kirk, Davy McCallender were all shot up and died fatally. This entire moment will be the last mission and the end of Red Dead Redemption 3. I have no idea how they would do the free roam so Rockstar would have to be clever. I don't know what the future gaming will be. I can't tell you that. Maybe we'll be finally be inside the metaverse with the VR simulation of the Matrix like Ready Player One. Who knows? But I can tell you this. Uncle's Red Hollow, that put me wrong.